Thanks for joining us for this week's Health News You Can Use. I'm Lindsay Stish. This week, we're talking about the science behind the COVID-19 vaccines and addressing some concerns and misinformation. With me today is Nick Bennett, manager of the Antimicrobial and Diagnostic Advisement Program at St. Luke's Health System. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
The development and distribution of the COVID-19 vaccines within a year of the coronavirus outbreak is no small feat. The new vaccinations are among many tools to help stop the spread and end the pandemic, but a vaccine is only effective if people are willing to get it. The rapid deployment has been met with concerns, leading some people to be hesitant to get the shots. Well, Nick, while the first vaccines were developed in record time, no shortcuts were taken in the process. Can you speak to the efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccines and how we know they're safe?
The current vaccines available on the market from both Pfizer and Moderna were rigorously studied, as we would expect for all vaccines, even in pre-COVID times. From an efficacy standpoint, they evaluated over 70,000 patients in both studies collectively, and they looked at the outcomes compared to those who received placebo versus those who received vaccines. What we can state is that there was a 94 to 95% efficacy rate for patients who receive the vaccine versus those who received the placebo, thus meaning that it was highly effective at preventing somebody from getting the COVID virus after they've received the vaccine. From a safety angle, they were also rigorously studied. All patients were followed up for safety markers, but they also intently followed a subgroup called a reactogenicity group. What this is targeted at is looking at the side effects that we would probably expect from somebody who's developing an immune response from a COVID vaccine or any other vaccine. So the stated side effects from these vaccines are most likely going to be arm pain. Some of the reactogenicity side effects you might expect are fatigue, headache, fever, muscle aches, and sometimes chills, but they don't happen in everybody. The other important fact is that they study these patients 8 weeks out, which is a period of time in which we would expect side effects, major side effects to happen. So it's reassuring that there was no major signals as far as the side effect profile goes.
And there's a lot of uncertainty regarding these vaccines. What would you like people to know who are leaning away from getting the shot?
One of the most talked about, and rightfully so, topics is the mortality associated with COVID-19, which is far too high. One of the underappreciated discussions is the morbidity or quality of life after you've had the COVID-19 virus. We now are far enough from the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic where we're starting to see some of the complications patients might have after acquiring the virus. For instance, there was a study from China looking at the longer term side effects, such as people having persistent breathing issues. They've had neurologic issues. They've had insomnia. So the point here is that while not getting the vaccine is certainly an option, there are ramifications and trade-offs to not getting vaccinated. The other really important fact is that in order to make us get back to what we consider a semi-normal state, it's been suggested that we have to have at least 60 to 70% of the United States vaccinated or have some type of immunity built up. And the only way we can make this happen is to get people vaccinated as soon as we can. The most important message here is that we as healthcare providers not only respect but appreciate people's autonomy and individual decisions, but it's really important to understand that there are trade-offs to get us to the point where we all want to be.
You mentioned these vaccines were developed with the new mRNA technology. Can you explain how those vaccines work?
Yeah, before we get too into the details of how the mRNA vaccines work, it's important to step back and understand a little bit of the history of the mRNA vaccines. The mRNA vaccines have been studied for a few decades now, and they've even been studied most recently in viruses such as influenza and Zika virus. So one might ask, why are we using them now and for the first time in COVID-19? Well, the unique thing to understand about the mRNA technology is that it can be quickly scaled, meaning that if you had something like a pandemic pop up, we can quickly mass produce and then push these into studies and look at the safety and efficacy of these vaccines. Thus, the COVID-19 pandemic provided the perfect opportunity to mass scale these vaccines and study them in the human population. Now, getting back to the original question, how do the mRNA vaccines work? The mRNA vaccines do not contain live virus, nor do they alter your DNA. They don't actually get to the right part of your cell to alter your DNA. The mRNA virus gets injected through the normal vaccination delivery method. Then it gets to your cells. It tells your cells to produce what we call spike proteins, which you would see on the COVID-19 virus. your body recognizes this is not normal, and then it creates an immune response. And this immune response is what's critical for you should you ever get exposed to somebody with COVID-19 to prevent you from getting sick. In more simple terms, imagine the mRNA vaccine like an email. Imagine you telling yourself to send the email to cells in your body to do something specific, like develop an immune response. Well, your cell reads this, it develops an immune response, and it sends that email directly to the deleted folder, never to be viewed again. So not only does it not alter your DNA, it does not give you the virus itself. It just tells your body how to react.
Now, the vaccines currently available require 2 doses. Why is it important to get both?
If you hear the high effectiveness rates of the COVID-19 vaccines currently on the US market, those occur after people receive both doses of the vaccine. So to make sure that you're most protected, we highly encourage you to not only get the first dose, but the second dose as well.
A new, more contagious variant of the virus has been confirmed in multiple states. Do the current vaccines protect against this strain?
Yes, the encouraging news about the vaccines that are on the market is they have looked at the effectiveness against these strains that are now circulating around the world, and there is no cause for concern about whether these vaccines work. So the take-home message for getting a vaccine is take whatever's available to you, and we continue to learn more, but it's promising right now that the current vaccines in the market still work for these variants.
Okay, thank you, Nick, for joining us. Well, next week, we'll be discussing how St. Luke's is using technology to improve the patient experience with St. Luke's East Hospital's Chief Nursing Officer, Susie Krug. You can stay up to date with all of the latest developments on the COVID-19 pandemic and other health news from St. Luke's at stlukeskc.org/news or by following us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time on Health News You Can Use.